Hi, and welcome to the next module in my spiritual development series called Ruach. Today's topic is one of the most difficult ones of all, yet probably the place and the thing that creates the most spiritual growth, which is the existence of pain and suffering in our life. And pain and suffering and tragedy is here. Life is tragic, and there's really no real way around it except when we avoid or we check out from it. But the fact of the matter is that pain and suffering it's in life, and is even a part of it that's ingrained in us, in our lives. And so what I want to talk about here is ways that we can look at our relationship with pain and suffering, because we get to evaluate our beliefs and feelings and thoughts about it and how we relate and respond to it, and also ways that are not effective and destructive in how we respond to pain and suffering. And I want to kind of just bring up some ideas around how we can do that so our mental health doesn't deteriorate and our lives don't become worse, but they get better. And so with that, I like to state, like I did earlier, life is tragic. And I don't really mean to even say that flippantly or insensitively, because we all experience it. But this topic deserves some very straightforward ideas around it, and it's an admonishment about it. One of my favorite things that the Apostle Paul said, he said, "This momentary affliction is working out a greater glory in you." Those words, I don't think, are meant to really be comforting or to minimize suffering. I think he's just speaking a truth, that the design of pain and suffering is made to work out something better later. Our job is not to get in the way of that. Whatever struggle we're in, whatever we are asked to sacrifice, is made there and is there to make our future better and to make us better and to know the presence of God more clear. So pain and suffering is here for something better for us. It started from the very, very beginning of time that we know of, when God presents to Adam, your curse is going to be work. And work was the first way that man had to sacrifice his time and understand delayed gratification. Work now, eat later. Work now, rest later. Work now and have shelter. Work now and life's better later. That was the first element of sacrifice that we learned of. And then the whole idea of sacrifice amped out. And with women, it was childbirth, the pain in childbirth. Pain produced life. That became life's metaphor. Pain produces something better later. Except what happens, unfortunately, is when we don't know how to deal with our suffering, we take on ways and strategies that become now destructive. And that's what happens a lot of times I see in mental health and people's lives, is how we come upon tragedy or some kind of affliction, and our strategy is one that becomes counterproductive. For instance, ways not to cope with pain and suffering would be blame. So easy when things happen that we go to the blame. Someone's fault, and it's not fair, and so poor me. And pity becomes a really dangerous drink to partake of. And now my view of myself and my stance in life is I'm a victim. And that's just who I am. And there's great power in that. And there's a justified sense about that. However, that works always against us in the long run. Pity, blame, victimhood, and or martyrdom the righteous stance of hurting oneself for the greater good becomes a poor strategy in handling pain and suffering, because you just have a destructive now path, and it cripples you later. So that is what happens in people's lives, and they fall in a really bad pattern of life. And on top of that, or with that, is also the immediate fix. I will medicate, and I will introduce myself to substances to contend with the pain and suffering. That way I don't have to deal with it. And I can medicate, numb out, escape, and now I'm not feeling that stuff anymore. And that becomes addictive. And then we have this now self-afflicted approach to pain and suffering, where I am just now contending with my own medication, and now I'm locked and I'm trapped in my own jail. And that becomes tragic itself. And that's a different kind of tragedy we don't really want. Instead, pain and suffering can work out a better glory. It's here. So what are the things we get to understand about pain and suffering is that it's here to teach us something about us we never knew. And it gives us the best things in our life sometimes, if we think about it, right? That, think of a moment or a challenge you had, and it was hard, and it was difficult, and it was perplexing, but you got through it, and you overcame it. And at the end of it, you're like, oh, yeah, we did it. We learned, oh, we won, or we understood now, and it's like, it's over. Yeah, that was good. You would never understand winning or overcoming or enduring unless suffering or resistance was there. Those things are necessary. You know, I find it too often we fall into the cliches of, man, I can't wait to one day retire and go to the beach and sit on the beach with a margarita and watch the sun go down. As if that's the higher good. As if that's the point of life, to have the best life ever. To live in luxury, to live in peace, and all of that. I don't think that's true. I think that's sort of a deception. I think those are nice things to have. I think it's happy. Like, happiness is good, but it's not the higher good. It will come and it will go. But, I couldn't imagine laying on a beach for years and drinking margaritas. That would just be kind of bad after a while, right? The best life ever is how you get through your growth and how you grow and how you handle some resistance and pain and suffering, because that's where you find the guts of life. It's where you find your strength. It's where you find the wisdom. It's where you find how you've overcome. It's how you've found a way to rely on something bigger than who you are, which is God. You get to find yourself most of the time through dealing with pain, dealing with the suffering or the resistance. It's here to teach us something. Whenever you sacrifice something gets brought to you afterwards. You sacrifice a gratification, what you have later tastes and feels so much better, right? When you work hard enough for something, the reward that comes later is valued so much more highly. So I think we all understand this kind of principle in life, that sacrifice brings something better later. But here's the thing, though. What happens if we have a Cain and Abel experience, right? Where you go ahead and sacrifice something that's not good enough. Then what? Become bitter? Dark? Or do you understand that the hard work is meaningful anyway? That you have the ability to work hard and to endure, even if the reward isn't so immediate. That's okay. Don't fall into, I have to be rewarded all the time either. That's a bad trap. So pain and suffering does demand an understanding that it's here. It's here to help us, teach us something. It also allows us and affords us the chance to reach out and get help from others. I've seen this so many times. People suffer and don't ask for help. Well, that means you just decided to be a victim and a martyr and your own Superman and your own God. That's a bad trap too. So when you're suffering and going through a hard time, reach out and get help. and someone gets a chance to be big for you, and that's a good thing. Also, it's here to teach us that we can overcome, and that we can practice some order in my life and do one thing at a time and get through this. I can also do things that help me get through this, like just standing in it, not avoiding it. And they also help us to rely on God and not just ourselves. And the outcome, before you know it, you are stronger than you ever knew. You have a wisdom that there's no price tag for. You actually then can let go of any resentments. And you can also let go of any bitterness and anger, because you found the meaning and the purpose of their suffering. I can't tell you how many people I've met in life that after they got through their season, they became now a helper in that. People who overcome addictions become great addiction therapists. People who have gone through trauma in their life become great trauma advocates, victim advocates. People who have gone through struggles in life become great helpers in the world and profound teachers in the world, only because they suffered well. So here's what we have to decide. We're going to suffer well or suffer poorly. And suffering well is to endure. Suffering poorly is to go the quick out. Two paths we get to choose from. Thank you for listening and wrestling with this very difficult topic. I hope we all suffer well. God bless.